question 4. We're doing pretty great on time. So this is also a long one, and then after that, we're getting into some rapid fire. But in a recent meeting on violence prevention, City of Portland evaluation specialist Brian D'Ambrosio reported that gun violence in Portland has dropped by 22% since August 2023. Ryan also highlighted that there was a 38% reduction in Black gun violence victims over the past year. The city is attributing the overall decline in shootings to the success of gun violence prevention programs that received funding from both the City of Portland and the statewide allocations of the federal pandemic funds. There's this great organization, Healing Hurt People, that's a partnership between POIC, a Black-led nonprofit, and the city's Office of Violent Prevention. And this group, what they do is they offer counseling and outreach to community members at risk of gun violence. And then they also, this includes also victims of gun violence. I'm gonna go back to you. We're going like a 2-2 thing here. How will you prioritize the continued funding and the success of community-centered programs that have proven to prevent crime?
To me, that's one of my top priorities as far as what we're going to fund at the City of Portland. This question made me think of something I'm working on in my day job, which is school meals for all, to make universal school meals for students in classrooms, breakfast and lunch. And something that we just learned from a study last year was that when kids are getting expelled from school, they started looking into why that's happening, and they found that students are acting out. And then they said, okay, why are those students acting out? And it turned out that they were getting into fights with other students because other students were identifying them as being low income or poor because they were using the reduced school lunch, and that was causing them to get into fights. And ever since we had more universal school meals in Oregon, we saw a great reduction in particularly Black, Brown, and Indigenous students being expelled from school because they were not being treated differently by their peers for their economic status. And I think that a lot of the programs under the Office of Violence Prevention have connected community to resources, right? If you have youth programs, if you have the mental health programs and counseling for folks that are impacted by gun violence, I'm fully in support of that. I'm also very interested in using environmental design to address crime. I think the placemaking projects are really interesting. And for folks who don't know what placemaking is, if you ever go into your neighborhood and you see like a beautiful street that's closed down and there's like rainbow paint on the floor and it's a little communal area in the middle of your street where people are able to walk through because there's not a fear of cars driving through or a drive-by shooting happening, that's placemaking. And that's done with all of the neighbors making that decision together. The neighbors come together to beautify the space and to use it differently. It creates a community space where people can meet each other in public because we don't have any free third spaces anymore where people can exist outside together. And all of that is public safety. Getting to know your neighbors is public safety. Getting a place where you can walk outside and not worry about a speeding car or a drive-by shooting, that's public safety. So I love environmental design as a result of that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing some placemaking in. Similar question to you. How you prioritize the continued funding and success of community-centered programs that have proven to prevent crime?
So, I mean, my answer is it would be a really high priority. I can't say exactly how to replace the money that has been used from federal grants for this and a number of other things. I used to be married to a criminal justice researcher, and so I became familiar with some of the criminal justice research. And there's a guy named Patrick Sharkey, who's one of the leading criminal justice researchers in America, and he says that research has shown that actually police do reduce crime, unlike like investments in prisons. But having the presence of police does reduce crime. But he says, at what cost in terms of the relationship of the government and the community? And he says that in the context of the great crime decline between 1994 and 2014, community organizations played a large role. And it's hard for volunteer community organizations to keep going. And he said, we need more public investment in community organizations. So I think that that's right. The question is, where do you find the money? People in Portland, at least the public perception is people are tired of increasing taxes. Right now, Although, as Angelita pointed out, there's a lot of people who would like to reduce funding for the police. The majority of Portlanders say in poll after poll, we need more police. So if you're going to shift resources from the police to community organizations, that's going to require an intensive public discussion to get people to buy into it. I think that, and of course, we also need to be sure we're investing in community-based organizations that really make a difference. I actually need to know more about healing hurt people, but you of course can't assume that people to say, hey, we're a community organization, we'll solve the problem, that they know what they're doing. So I think you need to be looking at examples here and also examples like in Boston, which has had this phenomenal success of how do they identify the community organizations that are most effective and how do they fund them.
Thank you. I want to put some links in our caption. You know me, I'm just throwing resources left and right, but there's a lot of disinformation, misinformation out there. I want to remind folks listening and watching that our police budget is nearly $300 million. Despite this large amount of sum, there's actually quite a lot of vacancies in the police department, and there has been even before the pandemic. So this perception, which I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, that we don't have enough police, we give them money to hire more police. They're not hiring them. They're using it for other things that we can talk quite a bit about. I want to go back to you. Is there anything else you would like to add around this concept, again, about funding and the success of this community-centered programming?
I'm trying to think if I said anything that I want to add. No, I think honestly, I don't think that police are providing the public safety that we need. So they do have a massive budget, far more than in the year that they were defunded, 15 million from them. They have a massive budget and we're not seeing the results. And I don't think that there's any other bureau that we have that we would say, oh, you're not producing the results that we need. Yeah, let's just give you a blank check and keep giving you more and more money to not produce the results that we're asking you to produce. Police seem to be the only agency that is given the benefit of the doubt to continuously not produce for us and get the most amount of money in the city. So I'm really invested in dealing with some of these programs and making sure that they're getting the adequate funding to treat the root of the problem instead of addressing crime, because that's something police address things after the fact. They're not addressing the reason why crime happens in the first place. And so that's really going to be my focus if I were elected on city council. And I think the fact that we talk about crime, but then we don't talk about the fact that when police do a shooting and they murder a member of our community who's often a Black, brown, or Indigenous person or someone dealing with a mental health crisis, that's a crime as well, or it should be, even though it often isn't. And to me, I don't want to necessarily invest in that. I would love to give back to the community and to make sure that our resources are being allocated in the best way possible.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it back to you for 2 minutes. Do you have any closing thoughts around investments in community-centered programming?
Well, again, I want to go back to my hobby horse, which is reallocating prison funds. I mean, that's something that it definitely should be an option. And again, people talk about how crime is now, well, at least before the pandemic, and I think it's going back towards those levels. Crime is like lower than it's been since the 1960s. But in the 1960s, we had many fewer people in prison. So somehow we managed to have low crime rates with much lower level of prison use. And if you set up a system which allowed local jurisdictions to choose to not overuse prisons and invest that money in other things relating to public safety, including in community or anti-violence community organizations, that could raise enough money to actually make a big difference. And again, I doubt that Nathan Vasquez is going to be lobbying with us for that, but I should actually ask him. It's part of the shame of Mike Schmidt losing that he would have been a partner in that.
Thank you so much, both of you. There are definitely quite a lot of that both of you mentioned that directly impacts the Black community here at a rate that's a little bit higher than I would say the other cultural groups and racial groups. I'm thinking a lot about the fact that Black people are over-policed and funneled into prisons at a high rate. I'm thinking about the war on drugs and just constantly, you can see that when you go to the state prisons, which I have. And then also as someone who is, again, not from here, but I don't know if I would be here without the reduction of lunch costs or just free lunch programs that really kept me and my family safe during this time and allowed us to flourish. So I'm very grateful that you brought that into the space.